ISIS is transforming 21st century warfare with a 21st century weapon, social media. Retired Army General Stanley McChrystal redefined counterterrorism strategy while at the helm of the Joint Special Operations Task Force in Iraq and Afghanistan.
He's also the author of a new book called Team of Teams, New Rules of Engagement for a Complex World. And he joins us now. So, General, thanks so much for being here. It's a pleasure. I just want to go straight to the title of your book, Team of Teams. What is that in reference to?
Well, I grew up in a world where small teams were key. You took great soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and you forged them into these cohesive, very effective small teams. But then when we got in Iraq in 2003 and 4 and started losing the war, despite these great teams, we learned that that wasn't enough. That as you scale the effort, you couldn't take the separated, discrete work of good teams and be effective unless you pulled them together into a team of teams, which is really a seamless network of organization. And it's difficult because it's what any organization finds when it tries to scale. It finds it's got to be much more organic. And in today's environment, which is more complex and fast-moving than ever, that ability to constantly adapt only comes from creating a team of teams.
And so, General, is the United States military putting into practice the ideas that are in your book? And if so, how is that strategy working against ISIS, which right now is the big topic that everybody's talking about?
My answer would be the U.S. military is doing it partly. But remember that any big military or any big government is based on sort of Frederick Winslow Taylor principles of efficiency, and it's designed into discrete elements, functions, either geographic or functional. And so there are processes, there are cultures, there are all the things that build up and make an organization predictable, but also ponderous. We've all lived with bureaucracy, and the military is no different than that. The problem is, fighting someone like ISIS, we think that somewhere ISIS has a war room in which they control, like marionette puppets, all the movements of ISIS around the world. That's absolutely wrong. They are much more of a franchised idea in which they push out very general guidance, and then execution is done at very low levels using initiative. If we try to fight that with a traditional hierarchy, with a centralized war room, and we try to take in this information, by the time that information comes to the war room, we consider it for a while, we make a decision, and we put it out, it's already too late. It's already wrong. It's like trying to shoot at a moving target with a fixed weapon.
So what needs to change then? Because, you know, if this has been the strategy of the U.S. military here for decades, what needs to be different here as it approaches a problem like ISIS?
Well, it's not just the military. It's the entire U.S. government effort, and I would argue wider into other organizations as well. As we got information technology, the first thing it seemed to be is manna from heaven for the micromanager, because suddenly you could bring all these feeds of information in. I could sit in my operations center in Iraq, and I could watch 10 or 12 operations at the same time, and I had the feeds to actually listen to their radio communications and talk to everyone, even though they were across the region. And so the temptation is, I now, as the wise person, can control these, and I know the most. The reality is that's completely wrong. Things are happening so fast down at the point of action that instead of trying to do that, what you have to do is reverse the mindset, push the information, the context you have down to that low level, and let them make decisions, because as things are occurring that quickly, only they will have that fingertip feel for what's occurring. Only they will be able to make the kinds of adaptation, but they can't do it unless you push the information down. And in most traditional hierarchies, we have this push the information up and let the wise people make the decision.
General McChrystal, I want to read to you a quote that's thousands of years old, but I first learned it when I was a young cadet in the Reserve Officer Training Corps. This is from Sun Tzu, and the quote that I selected: if he is superior, talking the enemy now, if he is superior in strength, evade him. If your opponent is temperamental, seek to irritate him. Pretend to be weak that he may grow arrogant. Attack him where he is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected. We talk about the difficulties, the complexities of war today. We understand that, but these tactics that were employed very effectively by Ho Chi Minh during the Vietnam War, sounds to me, this is ISIS, isn't it?
Well, it's even better for what Osama bin Laden did. Osama bin Laden's stated strategy was to strike the United States, the great Satan, hard, and get us to overreact. And then he said when we overreacted, two things would happen. We would irritate, frustrate the entire Muslim world and make them our enemies, and we would bankrupt ourselves. And if you look at what happened, we did. We overreacted very quickly. We created a lot of ill will in that process, and we put ourselves on a hind foot. ISIS, in many ways, does the same thing. They attack in places. They make us feel like we've got to constantly react. We're constantly on the defensive. Their use of information technology makes us feel like they're around every corner and behind every door, and they are not. But if they can,
they want us to believe that they are, right? And their stated plan has been to goad us into putting our boots on the ground.
Well, I think they're trying to goad us into overreaction in many ways.
Yeah.
They would like us to possibly put forces on the ground. I think they'd like us to do a lot of things that might create more resentment in the region. And so anything we do needs to be very carefully thought out, but also very carefully tailored to the constant changes on the ground. Because if we think we've figured out al-Qaeda's strategy, we get in a small room, come up with a perfect counter to it, and go to execute it, they will change it as soon as we start. It's chess. If you think of the game of chess, it's interdependent. Your next move is based upon your opponent's last move. You don't start with a set strategy that won't change. And that's the way we've got to approach these kinds of activities.
Right. General McChrystal, before I let you go, they're asking us to wrap, but I just have a very quick question for you. What is, understanding that war is serious business, but what is your favorite wartime film that you've ever watched?
Wow, I mean, everybody remembers when you were a kid.
Yeah.
My dad took me to see the movie The Longest Day.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Great
Of
film.
course, after that, I wanted to be a paratrooper. And then later, I told him I wish he'd taken me to see the movie Wall Street.
General McChrystal, thank you so much, sir, for
Thank
being
you
with
so
us.
much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.